Let's talk about wealth inequality. And I realized that by me framing it that way, I just conjured a whole bunch of images in your heads, and a whole bunch of defenses went up, or a whole bunch of radicalization happened by me just pointing that out. In order to discuss wealth inequality, let's do a foundation first, and let's talk about the idea of inequality in itself. Are people going to be unequal by their nature? Yes, that is true. And I'll explain to you why that is. I don't personally feel that I want to work as hard as someone else might have to work to afford, say, a 10,000 square foot house. 3,000 for me is more than adequate. Does that make sense? Okay, I mean, I'm just using that as an example, okay? But it's just, you get the idea that I would consider that, frankly, a 10 or 20,000 square foot house more of a burden than a flex, really. I mean, that's a lot to maintain. So I'm not going to want to do something like that. So therefore, by definition, I'm going to be unequal to those who want to do something like that. I'm okay with that. All right, I'm secure in myself, so I'm all right with it. But let's talk about inequality, where the beginning of inequality starts, and then we'll come back to the money part in a second here. Inequality, the only way that you can achieve actual equality anywhere in the world, and this is going back through all of human history. It doesn't make any difference where you go. It doesn't make any difference what part of the planet you're on. It doesn't make any difference whether the earth is flat or a ball. It doesn't matter. All of human history, there has only been a couple of times where people achieve equality, and that's when they are all equally armed. And it doesn't make any difference whether you call it a government, a shogunate, a dynasty, an empire. It doesn't make any difference when the actual people are as armed, and I would go so far as to say as literate as well, I'll leave it at that, as the so-called ruling class, whatever you want to call them, and of course the people, the peasants, the workers, the plebs, the whatever, I mean, you know, whatever, the makeys, whatever you want to call them, are equally armed with each other. That is the only way that you will ever achieve actual human equality, because then, you know, we can talk about the law. Right? You've all seen TikTok. You've all seen, you know, you've all heard that, you know, if you have a gun and I have a gun, we can talk about the law. Yeah, we've all heard it, right? And that's pinpoint precision accurate statement. Right? I mean, full credit to John Taylor Gatto, by the way, you know, who pointed that out as well in one of his interviews, that it's like the late John Taylor Gatto, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, he pointed this out as well, and this is the truth. This has never not been the case, by the way. This has never not been the case. So knowing that, let me talk to my commie followers and my socialist followers, my left-leaning followers, you know. Yeah, you should also be on the side of the so-called, you know, pro-Second Amendment people. You both should be. Now, the thing is that both sides, from what I can tell, they just want the other side to not be as armed as they are. In other words, you don't want equality, you want superiority, which is why I have no respect for either side. It's why I don't have no respect for either one of you. Because, see, you don't want to actually be equal, you want to be superior. No different than what feminism turned into. Feminism loosely started off with, we want equal pay for the same job, and it's turned into basically female superiority over men. And if anybody says anything against that, then it's use the government, in other words, a bunch of men, to go in and do something about it. And I would still argue that even with all that damage, by the way, that rent-seeking and landlords did more damage to the country than even feminism, and that's really saying something. So how do you achieve equality like that? Well, you have to actually undo all of those regulations, all those laws, get rid of ATF, etc. And then we can talk about the law. Okay? Now, what does that have to do with wealth inequality, which is what started this whole thing? Well, let's go back to it. If every company scamming you knows that you are equally armed as any government or protectorate, shogunate, I don't care what you call it, okay, dynasty, they're going to think twice. Because if they do so, because if they screw you too much, right? Remember, there's two laws on this planet, only two: physics and conscience. That's it. Physics is what this is. This, everything that you see around you, this is physics, okay? Everything, gravity, all of it, that's all physics. Conscience is the buffer between action and reaction. You can choose to not react to something. That's conscience. So when some giant mega corporation that we all know and hate screws you, you can make the conscious decision to say, you know what, okay, I'm going to just let it go. That's part of conscience. You can also say, you know what, I've been kind for too long. I'm entering in my launch codes and coordinates and I'm turning the key. Goodbye, mega corporation. That is how you achieve actual equality. So for those wondering about wealth inequality, yeah, it pretty well solves that problem as well. It doesn't solve the problem of me not wanting to work as hard as somebody else. It doesn't do that. So you're always going to have, again, a measure of wealth inequality by choice. But we're not talking about that because that's not what we're dealing with today. In today's world, particularly in the US, we're dealing with not just people who don't want to work, because there's tons of people looking for jobs. That isn't it. It's that your mega government and your mega corporations and your mega banking are doing everything they can to destroy you. And they're doing it because they are armed more than you. So, are you going to be respectable people on the left and the right? Are you going to be respectable people and actually say, okay, we need to work together? Or are you going to continue to be retarded?